So just take a listen to this interview, and at the end, I'll be here to say bye-bye for today. All right, today we'll be looking at the state of IDPs in Nigeria. I really don't even know what figure it is right now, numbers of persons that are internally displaced amongst us, but I know it's in the millions. The last time I checked, over 2 million. I don't know if it has increased more than that. And you know what actually saddens me the most, why I'm actually looking at it here, is that we hear of donations, we hear of grants, we hear of sums of money dedicated to the IDPs in the country. I know that Dangote and other individuals donated about 6.3 billion naira. There's a victim support fund, you know, that's a US fund, I think about $24 million, World Bank $800 million and all of that. And yet we're having malnourished children, yet, anyway, let me introduce my guests. Three gentlemen joining me right now. Dr. Bell Ihua is the Chief Executive Officer at NOI Post. Dr. Bell, Dr. Ihua, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Nice. I think you're in a fuse mode. All right. Close to him is Mohammed Alfa. He is the Executive Director at Forefront Media. Welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure.
Emmanuel Osemeka is the Country Director, Social Welfare Network Initiative. Welcome to the program.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Ihua, a report was released by NOI Post. Most IDPs suffer from lack of food, potable water, and health care. How is that possible? Where are the monies going to? Or we are just hearing those monies on pages of newspapers, or read it on pages of newspapers. We hear them on television, Dangote with Bono. You know, you get to hear United States people talking about that. President was in New York. They had leaders. I watched the Leaders Summit on refugees with Obama. He personally addressed that we need to begin to make more effort towards refugees. We have refugees in our own land here. What exactly is happening?
Nancy, and I think that's why we thought we should conduct this survey. So NOI Polls conducted a situational assessment of IDPs in the northeast of Nigeria. There have been a lot of anecdotal stories, a lot of media reports depicting very deplorable living conditions amongst IDPs. And, you know, we've been listening to all these stories, and we thought that there was need to conduct an independent, unbiased, on-the-ground assessment of the situation of IDPs in the country. So we actually mobilized and went into the northeast region. We visited 3 states, Borno State, Adamawa State, and Yobe State, Maiduguri, Yola, and Damaturu, to conduct an extensive survey speaking to IDPs themselves to understand their daily living conditions, the challenges which they are facing, and also speaking to key stakeholders in the region who have been working with IDPs to improve their welfare and safety.
Are there really malnourished children in Nigeria? Because, you know, sometime on the program, like 4 months ago, I remember I started my program, that's early morning, my prologue, I talked about malnourished children. That was on a Monday morning, I remember, because over the weekend I was so flooded with information and pictures. And that morning I did say on the show that for us as a country that we have internally displaced people and we allow our children to suffer, that means they've left the war zone, they are coming to safety, and yet they are meeting deadly conditions, that we are not worthy to call ourselves a country if we cannot secure the lives of people and our children. And I know that some people give me a backlash that day, oh, I thought you were talking about money. Why are you talking about malnourished children? I was like, hello, excusez-moi. You know, so are there really malnourished children here in the country? Did you see? Yes.
So 85% of IDPs don't have access to food. 85% of IDPs. About 78% of IDPs don't have access to clean water, while almost 70% of IDPs don't have access to health care and medicines. So we're having a situation where you have IDPs in official camps and unofficial camps. And when we talk about unofficial camps, we talk about uncompleted buildings, open spaces, which have not been officially allocated to the IDPs by the state government, so they are categorized as unofficial camps, then official camps. But mind you, the proportion of those who live in the official camp are just fairly low. So most of the IDPs live in host communities and unofficial camps, and yet you find out that most of them cannot access food, cannot access water and medicine. So, just as you said, the sad reality is that food is being provided, water is being provided, but a lot of these are being diverted.
What do you have to say about that? So
Well,
there are kwashiorkor-stricken children in the country, isn't it? Okay.
You need to go into these camps to see the deplorable condition of these people, the sorry states of the camps, and it's so pathetic that each time, no matter how hard your heart is, if you go into the camp, you will melt, no matter how hard you are. And the most painful aspect of it is that some people are, making quick money at the expense of these unfortunate people. That is the saddest part of the story. And if you've been following news lately, you discover that the governor has been saying a lot of things.
Governor of
Borno State has been saying a lot of things that got contradicted by his own officials. For instance, at a point, he came and addressed the press and said Borno State government was spending 650 million naira on IDPs every month. And the then chairman, State Emergency Management Agency, contradicted him. He said, if that 650 million naira that was said to be spending, that the governor said he was spending on the IDPs were meant for SEMA, then what comes to him on the average every month was 47 million. Look at the disparity. We've had a situation where the deputy governor was caught diverting 10 trucks of rice into the open market.
To sell.
To sell.
And what has happened to the deputy governor?
What happened
was he investigated? Was it true?
The truth, he was confronted by the media, and his response was that he got a verbal directive from the governor to sell those rice to buy condiments for the IDPs. I mean, how reasonable is that? How reasonable? You had Senator Ndume making allegations some time ago, not quite 4 weeks ago, that of the 115 trucks that the federal government directed the Strategic Grains Reserve to be sent to Borno, 60 trucks disappeared. Only God knows.
Disappeared to where? To thin air?
It never got to Maiduguri.
And we have the effrontery and we have that boldness to come out and speak about it. It's, what do you have to say?
Well, I'll stay with you on the malnourished children. As at February this year, first there were 2 reports that came out, one from UNICEF, another one from NOI Polls, talked about hunger and starvation, where Borno State had, I think, about 98%. Then, of course, the report was widely circulated. We also helped to share that report to relevant government agencies so as to have a more concerted and, of course, strategic plan to mitigate those, whatever was coming. Then secondly, UNICEF released a report that 1.6 million, at least under 5 children, are malnourished in Nigeria. And in Borno State, to be precise, in 2016, if nothing is done, we will have in our hands minimum 500,000 children will die this year. It's not last year, it's not 2 years ago, it's just this year. And not quite long, I think about 3 or 4 months ago, another report came from UNICEF. That number had, increased. We're talking about almost 1.9 million to 2 million of children under 5 that they've identified. It's much more than that. And we're looking at about 500,000 children at risk who are at that borderline of severe and acute malnutrition. So the issues are there. The reports are there, recommendations are there, but the problem is there's no will to first mitigate and take care of these issues. So you have hundreds of thousands and millions of children who are suffering because there's no food. The food, if it comes, from what we have is that NEMA is supposed to supply the food, then the State Emergency Management Agency is supposed to provide the condiment and logistics for cooking the food. But in the camp that houses about 8% of the total IDP population identified as 2.3 million, 8% of them are in the official camp of government.
So the IDPs we have in Nigeria 2.3 million.
2.3 million in the northeast, not the entire Nigeria. You have IDPs all over.
And it's steadily growing, because I think before it was around 1.5.
It was about 1.5, 1.6.
Yeah.
Then it's 2.3 as at 2014 figure, right? So it must have gone higher, but of course you know that there's some form of movement. So there are some movement going on. Well, I wouldn't call it resettlement, because there are certain variables, certain conditions that have not been met, and you resettle today and there's attack tomorrow, you bring them back into Maiduguri, where the humanitarian services can reach them. So there's a whole lot of shenanigans going on within and around the issues of the IDPs in the Northeast, and it rests squarely on the inactions and, of course, the lack of political will to immediately curb this situation that is not rocket science.
Dr. Ihua, does this actually make sense that releasing the reports that, of course, most IDPs suffer from lack of food, potable water, and healthcare, and, just the basic things that will make life comfortable for a human being? Where are the donor funds? I mentioned, because I follow the money where it is, really, 24 million US dollars from the US government, $800 million World Bank, 248 million US dollars, if I'm not mistaken. Even Saudi Arabia, $900 million, Australian government. Where all this money is going to? Where all this, yeah, exactly. Where this money is going to?
That's the question that should be asked. As researchers,
you're laughing. Where the money is?
As researchers, what we did was to go in to understand what the IDPs are facing. So there's something you can sort of give anecdotal evidences, but if you've got scientific hard facts, and that was sort of our objective in this survey, to demystify all these controversies, to bring out hard facts which no one can disprove and say, this is the state of IDPs in the Northeast. You can't take it away. Now, sadly, the food, water, and healthcare is just part of the story. So now we have situations where IDPs in most of the camps are living like prisoners in their own country. So we saw instances where IDPs, their movement is being restricted. They cannot have free access in and out of the camps.
Why?
They don't have access to telephones, because camp officials do not want them to have communication with the external world.
Why?
So that the external world will not know the true situation of what is happening in the camps.
The IDPs told you this?
I mean, we saw it for ourselves. I was on the field. I'm sure you
So they can't go out?
They can't go out. They can't even communicate. You can't come in as a visitor into the camps. Even our service was conducted. Sometimes we conduct those surveys at night to be able to have access to some of the IDPs that were able to.
What happened to their phones? They don't have phones, or it's sufficient?
They are not allowed.
They are not allowed to use phones.
Like, in seriously?
Yes.
It's
so
like
how do you integrate? What's the rationale?
It's like a detention camp. It is a detention camp, actually.
That you're even making them feel more alienated in their country.
Of course.
If I have a relative or a friend to a friend, I cannot call the person because the person is an IDP.
There are issues of abuse. So, the incidents of sex for food, sex for freedom of movement happening on the camps. These were things that we found. Some of the key stakeholders confirmed this. And these are the sort of issues, increase in unwanted pregnancy. Teenagers are now even taken into hard drugs. You have people now, becoming disillusioned, fighting, and all of that happening because certain basic necessities that need to be provided are not provided. So, and you have the gaps or the loose ends to allow anything happen.
Who should be responsible for all of this? Should people be held accountable? Is this an emergency situation?
That's the reason why we have said that, as a matter of urgency, that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission should immediately relocate to Maiduguri, because we want to see people arrested. We want to see beyond the investigation. I'm sure they are doing their underground investigation right now, because we've heard one or two issues.
I can't even phantom they don't use phones there. Is it that they don't have phones, or they sold their phones to get food or
Nancy,
something?
I'm from Borno.
Okay.
And we're telling you the real situation in Borno. You will not appreciate what we're talking about until you get there. until you get to the camps and see things for yourself. It's more than pathetic. That's true. And talking about money, you mentioned something in the region of over 6 billion naira.
Dangote and others.
Good. But do you know the governor came out to tell the world that all he had received from 2011 to date was 345 million.
From who?
From all agencies, 200 million.
Because even the last administration, T.Y. Danjuma,
Yes, the Boko
isn't
Haram
it?
Victim
Yes,
Support
the
Fund.
Victim Support Fund, which I also announced here. Victim Support Fund is there. Where are all this money? Is it that they didn't get to?
That is what he came out to tell the media, that he got only 345 million.
Now the question also would be, should the state government control those funds?
That is the
Are
question.
we looking at another model if we are we are not seeing accountability?
The
so to speak?
CSOs will handle the situation much better, if you ask me.
Our report,
Civil society organizations,
Yeah.
they will handle the situation much better, because these are people that have the interests of the distressed at heart. You wouldn't believe it. Camp officials, the little food that are supplied to the camp officials steal them. A lot of them have been arrested, not once, not twice, but that will be the end of it. You'll never hear anything again after the arrest.
And we're not even talking about food.
We're
looking at even the quality of food.
The quality
Is
of
it just rice and water you
rice
give
and
to them?
oil, rice and yaji, rice and just some sauce. This is what they eat.
If I may come in, I mean, the facts are there, and they are bare for everyone to see. I must say, sincerely, the recommendation, is a consensus recommendation that civil society, and that's what I and my organization have been advocating for a long time, over 2 years, that this responsibility should be given to the civil society, because the workings of our government does not have the M&E structures in them.
Monitoring and evaluation.
The monitoring and evaluation structure, they don't have it. Whereas the NGOs, I mean, you can't even begin any intervention without having the monitoring and evaluation component in them. But that aside, in actual fact, and even on ground, the interventions carried out by the civil society organizations have proven to be traceable and on ground. And we're not saying that they are 100%,
Yes,
without, but it's far better than what you have with the government. For example, in humanitarian response, you do not determine what to give to a distressed person. The process of healing is to actually allow the person and to communicate with you on what his most urgent need or needs are. So you begin with that. So they tell you what they want. Then of course you assess and guide where necessary. But in terms with the government, they provide what they think is good for the people. So if people are having issue of malnutrition, what is the cause of malnutrition? Lack of proper feeding, and of course absence of basic micronutrients in the body. And you bring food that contains far less micronutrients and give to the IDPs, or probably prepare them with less of the essential nutrients and vitamins that is needed for children to grow. That's why you have that. Vitamin A deficiency is on the increase in the Northeast as we speak. Before the insurgency, Nigeria was ranked by World Health Organization 3rd from bottom after Bangladesh and Indonesia.
It's
worse.
It's really a very sad situation, because looking at your report here, rising mortality of IDPs, evidence of human rights violation and sexual abuses, that we should take seriously. Reported cases of discrimination, even in the IDP camps. Then rise in social vices. The young people are taken to illicit drugs, prostitution, gangsterism. In the words of some key holders, let me just take a quote from a senior member of Borno Civil Society Coalition. In the evenings, the IDP girls, they used to sneak out and go do some prostitution and make some money so that they can buy food for themselves. That's it.
Or
That's
basic sanitary conditions. It's that telling.
What should our government, okay, for those of you that have actually been in the field and all of that, do you think that this administration have taken it seriously?
No.
They haven't.
No.
What do you think they should do? What are the recommendations?
Well, I speak from the point of the data which
Data
we
that you-
gathered,
yes.
and from that point, two things critically which we, one, I mean, the summary of this whole survey is that the food, water, non-food items, NFIs meant for the IDPs are simply not getting to them. So as he said, we think first and foremost that, you know, some sort of investigation be done to find out where all this money is going, where
Where should the
all the-
investigation emanate from?
all the, you know, probably
Because
from
the
EFCC.
state government right now, like we're seeing it now, is not doing anything around it.
You know,
The
probably from the
investigation should come from the
EFCC.
federal government
From federal
through
government.
agencies like the EFCC or ICPC, and the investigation should also be thorough, very, very thorough.
Should
And-
there be an independent body apart from the EFCC? EFCC, economic and financial crimes.
Yes.
Should we, EFCC is like saddled now, should there be an independent body that the federal government raises to do that? Because I also know, I think during the Jonathan administration, I don't know if this administration continued with it, they actually put a committee together to go and ascertain the states of the situation over there at the,
Yes.
I don't know what
This-
they came
this-
up with.
The vice president visited Maiduguri,
Not once, not twice.
not once, not twice.
The wife
And
of the
specifically, he went to the camps to see situation of things in the camp.
So what happened after the visit?
The unfortunate thing is that, you know, when high-ranking office holders are going to Maiduguri, what the state government normally does is they make the situation in the camp look, you know, receptive, look nice enough, so that
As if they are doing something.
yeah.
In addition to that, I remember vividly that we, from the several advocacies we've had, we had an engagement with the vice president, and it was after that that he went to the camp. And after the visit, we made some recommendations which they took, and they called for the Northeast stakeholders meeting, which held in the Government House, Borno State. The vice president was there, and I remember clearly the fulcrum of the vice president's speech was that the NGOs and the civil society are the unsung heroes. They are the ones who have been working and they've not been acknowledged. And that the success that has been witnessed so far is as a result of the sacrifice of the NGOs. Therefore, going forward, that the NGOs will be empowered, the NGOs will be the engine room of every intervention in the Northeast. And that was where it ended, a speech. The Presidential Committee for the Northeast Interventions, headed by retired Tiwai Danjuma, is now embedded, the Victim Support Fund is embedded in between it, Save the School Initiative and the likes of them. Their job, from what we understand, is that they're supposed to rebuild the infrastructures. But of course, we agree that infrastructures needs to be rebuilt. But first, we have a major crisis in our hands. From the report, of course, not just this report, there are several other reports that this report gives credence to. 85% of the IDPs can't find food to eat. So if 85% of the people who you're rebuilding their communities for dies, who occupies that community place?
You know, I think it should just be, it should be an alarm right now that we should start raising.
Exactly.
Because it's a very sad situation that even as the country is passing through recession, those of us that are able-bodied, those of us that are not even internally displaced, we are finding it difficult. Then let alone those that are internally displaced in their own country. And it's very pitiable because I do know that in 2015 budget, 5 billion naira was earmarked for the IDPs in the Northeast Initiative. 2016 budget, I think there's about 12 billion naira. And what is happening? I'm interested, where is the money? Because these are a lot of monies that if you aggregate them, we'll be able to even give them shelters. They won't be there. We'll be able to resettle them nicely. What exactly?
I think the federal government should ask the Borno State governor to explain.
Is it just Borno, about the other states?
The situation in Borno State is worse.
Is Adamawa getting it right? Is Yobe getting it right?
Adamawa, it's not as if they're getting it right, but their situation is far better.
And we saw that from the data
Yes.
also. From the data, the situation in Adamawa and Yola is better.
Adamawa and
Why
Yobe.
is it?
And Yobe.
What's better? What's actually better?
So-
What do you mean
so-
by
so-
better?
So IDPs have more access to food, slightly more access to food, slightly more access to water.
Not the normal rice?
Yes, I mean, rice, beans, couscous, whatever.
Okay.
You know, sugar. They have a little more access to these items than in Borno. I think the situation in Borno is really critical. The Dangote Foundation did some great intervention, and most of the CSOs and the stakeholders we interviewed used that Dangote Foundation model as a model that has worked. So Dangote Foundation said, we are not going to just come and hand over relief materials to camp officials or the state government or SEMA. We are going to engage the local CSOs and have them go into the communities and the IDP camps, identify IDPs who really need these items, and then they come to the open field, assemble the items, have their IDPs queue up, and directly hand
Give to
to
them.
hand give. And this is a model that has proved very effective in the distribution of food and relief materials. And I think, so the government, the federal government here, through NEMA, need to consider rethinking, the strategy of getting, because the current strategy that being engaged is not working. IDPs are not getting food. There's very little monitoring and evaluation in the process. No monitoring evaluation framework found. If you want to make sure that those items get to the IDPs, a very effective monitoring and evaluation framework has to be in place.
And do you know that the situation has gotten to a stage where the IDPs are now going on rampage? They'll come out, force their way out, block major roads, and their complaint is just focused on feeding.
Food.
And not anything else.
Sometimes they go 2 days without eating anything. 2 days without eating anything.
How?
If I take you back a bit, the entire IDP population, if you look at it and aggregate, Borno has 69.7% of the total IDP population. I think Yobe has 7%. Then Adamawa has less than 5%, 4-point-something%. So it might be a bit easy to handle those figures in those other states. The state of Borno IDP is unprecedented. We must give that. However, we want to believe that with the amount of funds that have been injected into the states, because like you said, you follow the money. We also believe that I would not subscribe to an independent body. I want NGO, I want EFCC. I mean, EFCC is the legal organization constitutionally to trace
To look at where the
yes,
money
they
is
can trace the
generated.
money. They've shown over time that they can trace the money. So they should trace the money, recover it. Nigeria is in recession. So if that money is recovered.
How about trace those food items that are being sold?
Well,
because that's also
if the food item is being sold,
yeah.
you will see the
But
money.
that's a lot of money. I was also told at the time that you go to marketplace, you see the bags
yes.
of rice
We actually saw,
yes.
we saw some of that
in the marketplace.
We were there.
And sellers
we
are
saw-
there selling
we
it.
saw actually
What
saw
will happen if a bag of rice that is meant for the IDP is found in a shop at the
And you even
marketplace?
asked, say, this is written not for
Not
sale.
for sale.
How come? Say, please, if you don't want to buy, please kindly leave here.
And
Okay.
what the government officials now, I mean, especially SEMA officials, now resorted to doing is rebagging. They'll go and buy empty bags of rice and rebag the consignment into their own bags
Yeah.
and get them sold.
For those of you that have been working on the field and for those of you that are NGOs working with the IDPs, have you laid some of these concerns with NEMA, for example?
Yes, precisely.
Have you accosted, have you
No.
mentioned it, the senior officials, NEMA has a
NEMA is
DG.
handicapped.
NEMA is handicapped?
The truth is, all of this has a lot to do with the political will. I must be honest with
Is
you.
it that NEMA is handicapped or NEMA is also one of those cool
NEMA is handicapped.
Okay.
Do you know NEMA officials don't even have access to the camp? What they do is, yes.
Is it true?
The camps by structure, and by the structure that is operational is headed by the State Emergency Management Agency.
Yes.
So the NEMA officials in the camp are just there supposedly to supervise and monitor what's going on. But of course, you can't have one NEMA official in a camp of 60,000 people. How much can he do?
Okay, just as we end the program, Dr. Ihua, are there recommendations?
Yes, a few recommendations from us. We are not CSOs, we are public opinion pollsters. So we just give the numbers and allow the numbers to speak for themselves. So one, we've recommended that better synergy between NEMA and SEMA, because
NEMA is the
yes, NEMA is the national.
Is Abuja.
Is the
Exactly. So
NEMA is Abuja.
so
Then SEMA is the state.
the state level, yes. So there was an MOU that NEMA produces the food items, SEMA produces condiments and logistics. So we found out that there have been periods where NEMA fails to deliver its own part of the MOU. So there
Why?
are no supplies
Doesn't
of
have
food,
money?
maybe logistics, whatever. So because of that, IDPs go hungry. There are also instances where NEMA has provided food materials, food stuff, and SEMA cannot provide logistics. So sometimes things as basic as firewood would make IDPs go hungry for a couple of days. Sometimes the lack of diesel to power the boreholes so that water can be used for cooking can make IDPs go hungry. So there needs to be some synergy between NEMA, SEMA. The logistics needs to be properly tied up so that but beyond that, there's a lot of work that the state government has to play. For example, the need for psychosocial support. We got some statistics yesterday. One of the CSOs at our event said at least 60% of the female IDPs have been abused in one way or another.
Yes, because as we are looking for physical support, social support in
Absolutely.
terms of food and all,
Psychosocial
we also
support.
need that psychological for a girl that's been raped, or for even a girl that goes to prostitute because she wants money for food. That's a different ball game. All right, for individuals that actually also want to be of help, people that really want to assist, what do we do? What do we do? Are there outlets?
Yeah, there are outlets. They can do that successfully through the CSOs.
Okay.
CSOs, any of the CSOs could be contacted to handle whatever support is coming from such individuals. And the truth about it is that we are in an emergency situation.
Is it only food, condiments, and co that we can actually give?
No,
Because
there are so many issues that is out there, but majorly we're talking food because first you've also mentioned it here, the entire country is also going through that food crisis. But so if the entire country is going through that, imagine those who are already displaced, and the entire northeast belt, there's no farming going on. Yes, and even now there's some sort of relocation going on, and it's not done properly because the landmines have not been cleared. That's one. So you're taking IDPs supposedly taking them back to their local government. So you take them back to local government headquarters and create a camp-like arrangement in that local government area. So from one camp to another camp, you take them from a camp where humanitarian actors have access to, and take them to a camp where it may be difficult to have access because of maybe some security measures have not been taken care of fully. Then the other part of it is that predominantly these IDPs are farmers, and many of them are itching seriously to go back and begin to fend for themselves because they've never been used to being idle or to be fed from hand to mouth. So
That's right.
the temptation to go to the farm, to go back to the farm.
yes, it's there.
And so it's a dangerous situation, and that's one of the issues we're talking about. So, but beyond that, so the issue of the security aspect, clearing the mines is one major aspect which we believe that government need to take, care of immediately and quickly. Then on the other part, you have the issue of the protection. You have protection issue, you have wash issue, you have the NFIs are there. Basically, people are taking care of, but predominantly food is a major issue. We've been talking camps. Don't forget that 92% of the IDPs that are not in the camps still within and around Maiduguri.
Yeah.
There are 92% of those IDPs. Several of them have not even gotten one support from anyone. And that's why for our organization, we did the One Love Project. And of course, the One Love Project is about the ordinary people on the streets of Nigeria. You participate, you give whatever you have. And the monitoring and evaluation mechanisms are there. We've been here, talked about it severally, and other avenues. So it's there. The CSOs are the only way for now to move forward, while government can play the role of monitoring on their own part and ensuring that the funds given, also get, are used judiciously.
Before I forget, he talked about segregation within the camps. Do you know, I was discussing with him yesterday, do you know that there's a camp called Monguno camp, and we have about 150,000 people in that camp, but it's sparsely spoken about. He, as a CSO man, does not even know about that camp.
That's true.
150,000 people in Monguno.
Okay.
That's Northern Borno.
Northern Borno.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that for now. We can't completely exhaust it, but what I'm happy that I've done, even as a business program, is also to bring this to the fore, because just like I said earlier on, I'm interested in following the money, and I'll keep up that advocacy in my own little corner, because I don't understand where all these millions of dollars that if you change to Naira are billions of Naira, getting into trillions. So I don't even understand where those monies are right now.
56 billion naira.
So I need relevant authorities to begin to talk about it. Minister of Finance, where are you? Kemi Adeosun, because monies are also earmarked in the budget this year for those kind of things. So Dr. Ewa, thank you very much. And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Perhaps one of these days I should follow you to the field.
You should.
I'll dress like you. All right, Mohammed Alfa, Executive Director, Forefront Media, thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
Emmanuel Osemeke, Country Director, Social Welfare Network Initiative, thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure.
And keep up the good work too. We'll continue at least to put those matters in the forefront. Many thanks.
Thanks a lot.
All right, that's the much we can take. Thank you for joining us.